Hey everyone, my name is Riley, and in this video I will be showing you step by step how you can create a pivot table on Smartsheet. Okay, so right here I have an example Smartsheet and some example data that I have put together, and this is the main data hub that I use. However, from this, we also want to create a pivot table in order to condense this data down and even make some points of data that we don't have access to in this main data sheet. So the pivot table I created as an example is over here, and we can see that in this pivot table, we've condensed this information down. So we've taken the assigned to right here, and we have all of these people who are assigned to different tasks. And in the pivot sheet, we went ahead and said how many tasks are assigned to each person. We also created a status column right here. So once again, we took the data from the main sheet, all of the different statuses, and organized this on the pivot sheet to show how many tasks are in get started, how many are in progress, and how many are complete. We also created a miniature budget tracker right here that keeps track of the percentage of budget spent and the budget remaining. So with this example, I will show you exactly how I created this table, and the fundamentals remain the same. So no matter if you actually want to track assigned to or status or any of these other options, the fundamentals that I will teach you when creating this table will be able to be carried over to any pivot table you want to create. Now, one thing to mention about Smartsheet is this is not like Excel, where we have a built-in pivot table function where we just go up to one of these options, select the pivot table, and then we can build it out on autopilot. Instead, we need to do this ourselves and create our own pivot table like I did right here. So the very first thing that we need to do is, if we have the main sheet right here, is we want to go back to Browse, and then we want to go into the main folder or workspace that contains your main sheet. So I have my Pet Store Launch main sheet right here, and this is the sheet that we will be using. Now, in order to create a pivot table, we want to create a new sheet. So to do this, we can go up to Create in this top right corner, and then click on Grid right here. And then we want to create a name for this sheet. So I'm going to call this pivot table, and we'll say for video, and then we can click on OK. And just like that, we are going to have a brand new blank sheet. So we can click into pivot table for video, and that's going to bring us over to this blank sheet right here. Now, the first thing that we want to do on this new pivot table is create like a miniature table or column inside of this. So as an example, I have assigned to right here. So I'm going to track this again. We can go in here and type in assigned to, as this is what I want to track. And this is going to be the column heading. So if I go to assigned to, what I want to be tracking is people's names. So I want to see how many people are assigned to each task. So all I'm going to do is enter the names in right here. So we have Laurie Grimes. We can enter that in. Then we have June Taylor. Then we have Henry McNeil and Brent Williams. Just like that. And then do we have any more? And we have Kirk Caskey. So we just go ahead and type that in as well. Now, what I also like to do on a pivot table, as you can see right here, is add a little bit of color to these so we can differentiate between what we are tracking and the actual data. So I'm going to go in here and highlight all of this. We can change the color right here. The background color will change to blue. And then along the top, we can change column 2 to blue as well. Then I'm also going to go ahead and bold this primary column right here. And now we can actually start tracking the data. So the way that we do this is with functions. So there are a lot of Smartsheet functions that you can get access to. And what I would say is there is a lot of these, but don't get overwhelmed. Keep it very simple at first, and then we can expand into some of the more complex functions. So the simple functions and the functions that I use 99% of the time is going to be sum, which is going to do addition, subtraction, things like that. Then we have average, which is going to calculate the average, COUNTIF, and honestly, those are the main 3 that I would stick to. So we can create like 90% of the data sheet that way. And then if you have anything else that you need to calculate on your data sheet, then you can head over to this functions list and find what you are looking for. But as I say, honestly, this will do 90%. So what we can do is go into column 2 and actually start typing out these functions. So I want to calculate how many times Laurie Grimes is assigned to a task. So in here, we can type in equals COUNTIF. And now it's going to ask for a range. So it's basically going to say, where do you want me to pull this data from? Now we need to reference another sheet because we don't have the data on this sheet right here. The data exists on a different sheet. So we want to go back in, and once again, I will type in equals COUNTIF, and then the range, we reference another sheet. So we can select the sheet right here, and then once this loads in, we can select where we want to pull this data from. And it's going to be this row, assigned to. So we click on this, and then we can say insert reference, and now we have entered in the range. But the range is still selected. So what we need to do to switch from the range to the criteria we are looking for is click on the comma symbol. And as you can see, we will move from range to criteria. So now this is asking, okay, I know where to get the data from, but what specifically are you looking for? Well, in this example, I'm looking for Laurie Grimes. So what I'm going to do is you have to enter this within speech marks, otherwise it won't work. So we type in speech marks, and then we can go Laurie Grimes. We just type the name in right there. End this with speech marks, and then we can click on enter. Just like that, this is now going to calculate and tell me that in this column right here, in assigned to, Laurie Grimes shows up 3 times. And just to show you this, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Now, what you could do is you could just go in here and type in the same function. So once again, we could go for June Taylor, and we go for, once again, COUNTIF. Then we can select the range, so reference another sheet. We want to go for the assigned to. This is where we are pulling data from. Then comma, and this time we are looking for June Taylor. And I forgot to put the speech marks in right there. Let's just go ahead and do that. Enter, and this shows up 2 times. But an easier way to do this is to simply copy and paste. So all we do is click into this cell, copy all of the data in here, or the function, paste this in, and then all we are going to do is go to the end, and instead of searching for June Taylor, this time we are searching for Henry McNeil. And he shows up twice as well. So then we can just go down and once again paste this in. Instead of June Taylor, we are looking for Brent Williams, and he shows up 3 times. And then finally, we can enter this in once again. And this time we are looking for Kirk Kasky. Perfect. He shows up twice as well. So we now have assigned to, and we can see how many tasks are assigned to each person. The next thing that I might want to look at is the status and how many of these tasks are incomplete, how many are in progress, and how many are in get started. To do this, once again, we are going to use the COUNTIF feature. So this time I'm going to go to column 4. I like to leave a column in between my little tables just for formatting, but we can go in here and we can type in status. So what status are we looking for this time? If we go back to the table, we can see in status, if we click on this, we are looking for complete, in progress, and not started. So we go back to the pivot table and we can say not started, in progress, and complete. And then once again, we can make this nice and blue, have this the same color, bold this, and then once again, let's go in and use the COUNTIF function. So equals COUNTIF, and this time we are going to reference from the sheet once again, but instead of going to assigned to, this time we will just go to status because this is where we want to pull the data from. So we tell it we want to scan this row right here. So we scan this row, and now we tell it what do we want to find. So this time we want to find not speech marks, not started. Enter. We can see 5 of these are not started. Then we can do the same. There's no point in typing this out. So we just copy and paste this and change this from not started to in progress. And there's 3 of these. Paste this in once again and change this from not started to complete. Awesome. The next thing that we might want to track on a pivot table is kind of like a budget tracker, figuring out how much budget we have left, how much budget we have spent, and everything like that. So to go in here, let's go back to the pivot table. And in here, we are going to create a budget tracker. Now, for the budget tracker, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but something very important, and this is a very important function as well. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. This is VLOOKUP. And what VLOOKUP is going to do is it's basically going to drag data from one sheet into another sheet. So in this example with a budget tracker, if we are doing math and calculating things, this is going to be extremely important. Because let's say I wanted to figure out the percentage of budget spent. So percentage of budget spent. To do this, we technically could go in and we could do like sum, and then choose from another sheet, and then basically do it this way. This is not very effective, and this is not very good at all. So as I say, we do want to use VLOOKUP. So for VLOOKUP, we want to bring in, for a budget tracker, we want to bring in the budget and the actuals. We basically want to drag this from this sheet right here, the main sheet, into our pivot table. So let's go in and we can type in budget. And then we can type in actual. And then let's format these as well. And then down the side for budget and actual, we want to track the budget and actual, not for all of these because that's a little bit overkill in my opinion. I just want to track the planning, testing, and execution. So in here we go planning, testing, and execution. Perfect. And then we can just make these back to white. And this is where we can use VLOOKUP. So we go in here and we type in equals VLOOKUP. And all we want to do is drag the data over. We don't want to do any math yet. We just want the budget for planning and we want the actual for planning. So in here, it's going to ask the search value. Now, the search value is essentially asking which row do you want to collect data from? So let me just show you the difference. These right here at the top are columns, and then these down the side are rows. So for planning, if we want to get the budget for planning, well, we want to go for the planning row right here. We already have this typed in. So all we have to do is go VLOOKUP, the search value, we can go for planning. Or alternatively, you could go in here and you could just type planning like this. So between speech marks, just planning like that. But it's just easier because we have it right here to go planning. Then once again, we type in comma to move on to this next query. And in lookup table, it's saying, where do you want us to pull this data from? So once again, we can go reference another sheet and we can go back into the main sheet. And this time, even though planning is in task name, this is not what we want to select. Because if we go for task name, well, we have already told Smartsheet that we want to look for this row. So if we just enter task name like this, it's going to say row 2 task name, and it's only going to come back with planning. However, in here, we want to have the budget. So if we enter this, it's basically going to cut off right here because we don't have this data entered. So when you are using VLOOKUP in here, we want to select the entire sheet. To do this, click on the first column, then hold shift and click on the last column in the table, and that will select the entire sheet. So we can click on insert reference. And right now, we have basically told VLOOKUP, we want to be looking in the planning row across all of these columns. So planning and all of these columns. Then once again, we can click on comma, and this is very important. So when we are using VLOOKUP, it formats strangely. So if I was to enter comma right here, it's not going to move me because we are still inside of these brackets. So what you need to do is click right on your keyboard, and now we can enter comma, and it's going to move us to the next query. In here, it's going to ask us for the column number. So once again, I know I keep hammering this, but I think repetition is important to understand, especially for something complex like this. So far, we have told Smartsheet that we want to search the planning row across all of these different columns. And now under the column number, it's saying, okay, I'll scan all of this, but which column number do you actually want me to return? Well, we are looking for budget. So in here, we can see the budget is right here. And which column number is this? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is column 9. We want it to search planning, search through all of these columns, but we want it to return column 9. This is the value that we need. So in here, we can simply go in and we want to search for column 9. So we go in, enter 9. Then we can click on column once again, and match type, this always wants to be false. So we type false, enter. And as you can see, planning returns us a budget of 6,768. Let's just double check to make sure this is right. Planning, budget 6,768. Perfect. Now this is just formatted as a number and not a currency. So to change that is actually very easy. All we are going to do is go up to this top right corner, go to the currency and set this to US dollars. So we now have the budget for planning and we need to figure out testing and execution. Now what we could technically do is go in here and type in VLOOKUP and go through that whole process again, but that's not very effective. So what we can do instead, because Smartsheet is very smart, is we can just drag this down and look at that. It's going to autofill the rest of the information. So just to double check this, testing 13,200, testing budget 13,200. Awesome. So we now have all of the budgets in here. For the actual, we do have to do a VLOOKUP again. So we go equals VLOOKUP. And then once again, we search for planning right here. So we just click on this, comma, lookup table. So where do we want to pull the data from? Once again, we want to search for the entire sheet. So we will go into the main sheet, click on this, Shift, and then click on the last one, insert reference. Then from here, we can remember we need to click right on the keyboard to move out of this. There we go. Comma and column number. So last time we searched for 9. If you remember, budget is the 9th column. However, actuals is the 10th. So in here, instead of typing in 9, when it asks for which column do we want to return, we go for 10. And then once again, false. Enter. And planning, the actual is 5,375. Let's just check this. 5,375. And then once again, we can just pull this down and perfect. So that is how we can do a VLOOKUP right there. And all that is doing is pulling the data that we have from one chart into another chart. But because we now have this information into our pivot table, it makes it very easy to do some awesome maths with this. So the next thing that I might want to figure out is what percentage of the budget have we actually spent? If I go back to my main sheet, you can see that we don't have this on here. There is no way to figure out the percentage of budget that we actually spent on the main sheet. So let's set this up in the pivot table. We can go percentage of budget spent, just like that. And then if you run into this, where your text kind of overlaps and goes outside of the cell, this is very easy to fix because all we are going to do is select the column that this is on, and then we can just go up and click on wrap right here, and then we can see all of the text. So let's format this just like that, and then bold. And then in here, we want to figure out the percentage of budget spent. So this is where we are going to use the sum function. As I say, sum is literally just going to do calculations for us. So that is what we can use the sum function for. So in here, it's a very easy function to use. We just type in equals sum right here. And now it's going to ask which two numbers do you want to use and what do you want to do with these. So as we are figuring out a percentage of budget spent, then what we need to do is the actual amount spent divided by the budget. So in here for number 1, we can click on actual right here and we have this number. And then to divide, we just click on the slash key. So the slash key is divide, and then the rest of them are pretty simple. So the addition key is addition, and then the minus key is minus. So we want to do divide or slash by the budget, enter. And right here, we get a decimal. So right now this is a decimal, and all we need to do to turn this into a percentage is click on the cell, go up to these 3 dots in the top right corner and click on percentage. And just like that, we can see we have spent 79% of the budget. Then we can do the same down here. So testing, we go equals sum. Then we do the actual divided by the budget, enter. Then for execution, equals sum, actual divided by budget. And then with these, we just select both of these cells, go up and switch them to a percentage, and we can now see the percentage of the budget that we have spent. We might also want to figure out how much budget we have left. So in here, we could maybe go for budget remaining. And then once again, let's just format this. Awesome. And in here, we will use the sum function once again. So we can go equals sum. And this time, to figure out the budget remaining, this is very simple. We just do the budget that we have minus the actual cost. So we just click on budget minus actual. Perfect. Then once again, equals sum. Budget minus actual equals sum. Budget minus actual. And then all we are going to do is format these correctly. So we highlight them, go up to the currency and select the US dollar. So we now have this tracked out, but we could even take this a step further. So another function, for example, is going to be average. So if we wanted to figure out the average right here, we could type in average and then of course format this. And then to get the average, once again, this is a very simple function where all we do is go equals AVG for average. And what numbers do we want to calculate the average of? All we have to do is click and drag to select all of these numbers, enter, and then we can see the average right here. So the average of this is 16,000. Once again, we can go up, click on this currency button and turn this into US dollars. And just like that, we have the average. So we can do the average for actual as well, AVG, enter, select these numbers, perfect. Go up, currency, perfect. Then we can do the average of the budget spent, so equals AVG. So the average budget that we have spent is going to be 83%. And then the budget remaining, this time instead of doing the average, we actually want to figure out a total for this. So down here, I can go for total, enter that in. And this is completely wrong. I don't know why it added that in right there. But for the total, we can add this up as well. So we just go equals sum, and then by default, the sum function is going to do addition. So we don't need to click in and say this, add this, add this. We just select them, enter, and then we can see the sum right here. So once again, equals sum, select these. Then we don't really want to do this for the average. We can't really add these up. It would add up to like 100 and something %. But then we can go budget remaining. And once again, equals sum, select these. And the total budget we have remaining is going to be $7,693. Perfect. So with that, those are the main functions that you will need. As I said, that will do 90%. So that was sum, average, COUNTIF, and VLOOKUP, just like that. These are the 4 main ones that you will need. And if you do need any more, I would say it's a lot more advanced if you are going to use these. But you can look up on the Smartsheet functions right here and see exactly how to set these up. So that is how you can create a pivot table on Smartsheet. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to smash that like button and tap that subscribe button. And until next time, take it easy.